space around Earth suddenly filled with shadows. 3,000 alien warships appeared from nowhere, their dark hulls blocking out stars and casting Earth into an artificial eclipse. The ships moved in perfect formation, each one larger than humanity's biggest aircraft carriers, their surfaces covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move in the dim light. Admiral Vorth walked slowly through the command center of his flagship, watching his officers work at stations filled with glowing symbols. He had done this 47 times before on 47 different worlds. Each time, the local species looked up at his fleet and realized they had no choice but to surrender. Earth would be no different. The humans responded exactly as expected. Their primitive communication networks lit up with panic signals. Military bases around the planet activated ancient radar systems and launched their chemical rockets into space. It was almost sad to watch. These humans still used explosive fuel to reach orbit, while his ships could cross galaxies in days. President Walsh sat in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. Her hands shook slightly as she read the translation of the alien message that had appeared on every screen, radio, and communication device on Earth. The words were simple and terrifying. Surrender within 72 hours or face complete destruction. The translation came through perfectly in hundreds of human languages. English, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, Russian. The aliens had studied Earth's communications for just a few hours and already understood every major language. Their technology was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. General Robert Hayes, the HFY, highest-ranking military officer left alive after the initial panic, spread satellite photos across the briefing table. The images showed alien ships positioned at exact distances around Earth, creating a perfect sphere of destruction. Each ship was aimed directly at major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, every major city had multiple alien weapons pointed at it. Outside the bunker, chaos ruled the streets. People fled from cities in massive traffic jams that stretched for hundreds of miles. Store shelves emptied within hours as families grabbed whatever supplies they could carry. Churches filled with people praying for salvation that seemed impossible. News reporters tried to stay calm while describing the end of the world live. On television, the alien admiral studied the humans' response through his ship's sensors. Their military forces were gathering, which was brave but pointless. Earth's most advanced fighters used simple jet engines and carried weapons that could barely scratch his ship's outer hull. Their nuclear missiles might cause some damage, but his defensive shields could stop anything the humans could throw at them. What puzzled Vorth was how organized the human response had become so quickly. Most species collapsed into complete panic when faced with his fleet. Governments fell, military units deserted, and populations fled randomly in all directions. But these humans seemed to have plans ready for exactly this situation. Their leaders were calm, their military units stayed disciplined, and their communication networks remained active despite his jamming attempts. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked frantically in her laboratory 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. As head of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Array, she had been tracking strange signals from the outer solar system for months. Energy readings that made no sense appeared and disappeared beyond Neptune's orbit. The patterns looked almost like ships using advanced propulsion systems, but that was impossible. Humans had never built anything that could travel that far. The alien ultimatum played on every television screen in the world. Vorth's image appeared. A tall, thin creature with gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera. His voice was translated perfectly into human languages as he spoke. Your species will surrender all weapons and submit to Imperial rule. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your planet. Commander. Nexus, Vorth's tactical officer, noticed something strange in the sensor readings from the outer solar system. Faint energy signatures appeared at the edge of their detection range, too weak to be ships but too organized to be natural phenomena. When he reported this to the admiral, Vorth barely looked up from his tactical display. Human governments worked, through their first night under alien occupation, to coordinate a response. Rather than surrendering immediately, they began implementing evacuation procedures that seemed surprisingly well planned. Subway systems in major cities converted into emergency shelters. Military units moved to predetermined positions with efficiency that suggested months of preparation. Most importantly, key government officials disappeared into secure locations that the aliens could not locate or target. The second puzzle emerged when the aliens attempted to hack into Earth's computer networks. Their technology should have been able to break through human security systems within minutes. Instead, they encountered sophisticated countermeasures and encryption methods that blocked every attempt. Some of the human defensive programs even seemed designed specifically to stop alien intrusion techniques. President Walsh addressed the world from her secure bunker, her image broadcast on every surviving communication channel. She stood straight and spoke clearly despite the impossible situation. My fellow humans, we face the greatest challenge in our species' history. These aliens believe we are helpless because our technology appears primitive compared to theirs. They expect us to surrender without a fight because that is what other species have done. But they do not understand what it means to be human. The broadcast continued on channels that should have been completely jammed by alien technology. Somehow, human communications remained active across the entire planet. Military units received orders, civilian leaders coordinated evacuation efforts, and scientists shared data through networks that the alien fleet could not stop or break into. Admiral Vorth grew more frustrated as the first day passed without human surrender. His schedule called for complete planetary submission within hours of arrival, followed by the establishment of occupation forces and resource extraction operations. Instead, he faced organized resistance from a species that should have been cowering in terror. Strange incidents began occurring throughout the Cytherian fleet during the first night. Ships reported brief sensor contacts that vanished when investigated. Communication arrays experienced mysterious interference that lasted just long enough to disrupt important transmissions. Most disturbing, 3 scout vessels sent to survey the outer planets simply stopped responding to calls. They had not sent distress signals or reported any problems. They had simply vanished. As the second day of occupation began, it became clear that something was very wrong with what should have been a simple conquest. The humans were not behaving. Like any other species the Cytherian Empire had ever encountered, they were too organized, too prepared, and somehow too confident for a civilization that was about to be destroyed. Something was hunting the alien fleet in the darkness between planets. 3 more Cytherian scout ships had vanished during the night, their last transmissions cut off in the middle of routine reports. The disappearances followed no pattern that Admiral Vorth could understand. The missing ships had been investigating different areas of the solar system, using different flight paths, and maintaining different communication schedules. The human resistance puzzled him even more than the missing ships. Every other species in the galaxy had the same basic response to his fleet: panic, confusion, desperate attempts at negotiation, and finally surrender when they realized resistance was hopeless. But these humans acted like they had been preparing for this exact situation for years. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had not slept for 36 hours. Her underground laboratory buzzed with activity as her team analyzed data streams that officially did not exist. For 6 months, her deep space monitoring equipment had been tracking energy signatures from the outer solar system that matched no known human technology. The readings suggested gravity manipulation drives, quantum field generators, and dimensional phase systems that Earth scientists had only theorized about. The energy signatures were moving. Whatever was generating them had begun changing position throughout the solar system, following flight paths that would be impossible for conventional spacecraft. The objects seemed to be positioning themselves in a pattern that surrounded not just Earth, but the entire alien fleet. President Walsh received her daily briefing in a conference room carved from solid rock 2 miles beneath the mountain. The reports painted a picture that made no sense according to everything humanity knew about their own capabilities. Military units worldwide were reporting equipment upgrades that had arrived through supply chains no one could identify. Advanced communication devices, improved defensive systems, and weapons technology that was decades ahead of anything in official development programs. General Hayes spread new photographs across the briefing table, but these had not come from human satellites. The images showed sections of the outer solar system where massive structures hung in space near the orbits of distant planets. The structures were clearly artificial and definitely not built by any known Earth government or corporation. They were too large, too advanced, and too obviously designed for military purposes. The photographs raised questions that no one wanted to answer directly. If humans had not built these installations, who had? If Earth's governments did not know about them, how long had they been there? And most importantly, if they were human constructions hidden from public knowledge, why had they been kept secret? Commander. Nexus studied tactical displays that showed his fleet's position relative to the human planet. According to every sensor reading, the Catherians held complete military superiority. Their ships outnumbered human space vessels by more than 1,000 to 1. Their weapons could destroy anything humans had ever built. Their defensive systems could stop any attack Earth's military could launch. But the sensor ghosts worried him. Brief contacts appeared on long-range scans and vanished before tracking systems could lock onto them. The contacts were too large to be asteroids, too fast to be space debris, and too maneuverable to be natural phenomena. They moved like ships using advanced stealth technology, but that was impossible. Human spacecraft were primitive chemical rockets that could barely reach their own moon. Captain Rex Stone floated in zero gravity aboard the command deck of the SNV Defiance, watching status displays that showed the positions of 36 other ships scattered throughout the outer solar system. His vessel had been built in secret shipyards hidden among the asteroids, using technology that officially did not exist. The ship's hull was composed of materials that bent light around them, making detection nearly impossible. Its engines manipulated gravitational fields to achieve speeds that conventional physics said were impossible. The Defiance and her sister ships had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. Human intelligence agencies had been tracking the Catherian Empire's expansion across the galaxy, studying their tactics, analyzing their technology, and preparing for the day when Earth would become their target. The public space program, with its chemical rockets and primitive space stations, was a carefully maintained deception designed to make Earth look helpless and unprepared. The deception had worked perfectly. The Catherian fleet had positioned itself exactly where human strategists had predicted, following standard imperial tactics that assumed they faced a primitive civilization with no real space-based defenses. The alien ships had placed themselves in orbital positions that gave them complete coverage of Earth's surface, but left them vulnerable to attacks from the outer system. Dr. Rodriguez discovered the first proof that Earth's secret was bigger than she had imagined. Deep space monitoring stations that she had never heard of were transmitting data on secure channels that used encryption methods decades ahead of anything in her security clearance. The stations were tracking not just the alien fleet, but also human ships that moved through space using propulsion systems that broke every known law of physics. The data streams revealed a picture of the solar system that bore no resemblance to what the public knew. Hidden bases operated on moons throughout the outer system. Advanced manufacturing facilities built spacecraft using technologies that seemed almost magical. Most shocking of all, human ships had been making regular trips to nearby star systems for more than 10 years, gathering intelligence and establishing forward bases in preparation for interstellar war. Admiral Vorth called an emergency conference with his senior officers. The missing scout ships had become a serious tactical problem, but more disturbing were the technical failures affecting his main fleet. Weapon systems that had operated flawlessly for decades were suffering mysterious malfunctions. Sensor arrays were experiencing interference that followed no known pattern. Most troubling, his communication networks were being penetrated by intrusion programs that seemed designed specifically to counter Cytherian security protocols. The intrusion attempts revealed an uncomfortable truth. Someone had been studying Cytherian technology in detail for a very long time. The computer programs trying to break into his systems used methods that exploited specific weaknesses in Imperial security networks. Those weaknesses were classified information known only to a few high-ranking technical specialists in the Cytherian military. No primitive species should have been able to discover them. President Walsh received a communication that changed everything. The message came through channels that were supposed to be impossible. Quantum-encrypted transmissions that used technology Earth's scientists claimed was still decades away from practical application. The sender identified himself as Admiral Beth Harrison of the Solar Defense Fleet, commanding 47 vessels positioned throughout the outer system and ready to begin combat operations on presidential orders. The existence of Admiral Harrison and her fleet raised questions that President Walsh was not sure she wanted answered. How long had Earth been building advanced spacecraft in secret? Which government agencies had been involved in hiding humanity's real technological capabilities? And most importantly, what other secrets had been kept from the world's elected leaders in preparation for this day? The message included tactical analyses that demonstrated intimate knowledge of Cytherian military doctrine, ship designs, and strategic weaknesses. The information was so detailed and accurate that it could only have come from direct observation of Imperial forces in action. Human agents had been infiltrating alien space for years, gathering intelligence and preparing for a war that the public had never imagined was coming. As the second day of the alien siege continued, it became clear that nothing was as it appeared. The helpless human civilization, targeted for easy conquest, had been preparing for this battle for decades. The primitive technology visible from space was a carefully maintained facade hiding capabilities that would have impressed even advanced galactic civilizations. And the alien fleet that had come to conquer Earth was slowly realizing that they had flown into a trap that had been 20 years in the making. Reality shattered around the Cytherian fleet like glass breaking in slow motion. Human ships appeared throughout the solar system, their hulls becoming visible as stealth systems deactivated in perfect coordination. They had been there all along, hidden by technology that made them invisible to every sensor the aliens possessed. 37 vessels emerged from empty space, each one positioned to attack the alien fleet from impossible angles. Admiral Vorth stared at his tactical display, in complete shock. The primitive humans, who should have been cowering in terror, had somehow placed advanced warships behind, above, and below his entire fleet without triggering a single detection alarm. The ships were smaller than Cytherian vessels, but moved with precision that suggested decades of training and preparation. Captain Rex Stone watched the enemy fleet from the command deck of the SNV Defiance as his ship dropped its stealth field and revealed itself to alien sensors. Around him, his crew worked at control stations that used technology reverse-engineered from artifacts found in the asteroid belt 25 years ago. Those artifacts had been pieces of Cytherian ships destroyed in an ancient battle, and human. Scientists had spent a quarter-century improving on the original designs. The first human attack came from 3 ships that had positioned themselves directly beneath the alien flagship. Instead of using conventional weapons, they activated gravitational field generators that created artificial gravity wells around 2 Cytherian destroyers. The enemy ships, caught completely by surprise, were pulled toward each other by forces they could not resist or escape. They collided at tremendous speed, their hulls cracking open and venting atmosphere into space. Commander Nexus struggled to coordinate a defensive response, but his tactical systems had never been designed to handle attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Cytherian doctrine assumed that enemy forces would engage in traditional formation combat, meeting the Imperial fleet head-on in organized battle lines. These humans were fighting like pirates or guerrillas, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before return fire could be targeted. The SNV Retribution, commanded by Captain Lisa Park, demonstrated technology that violated basic laws of physics as understood by most galactic civilizations. Her ship activated dimensional phase, generators that allowed it to pass through solid matter as if it were empty space. The Retribution flew directly through the hull of a Cytherian cruiser, firing weapons from inside the enemy ship before phasing back into normal space beyond the vessel's defensive shields. Dr. Amy Rodriguez coordinated the battle from her underground command center, but she was no longer just a scientist monitoring alien activity. For 10 years, she had been analyzing intelligence gathered by human ships operating in Cytherian space, studying enemy tactics and identifying weaknesses in their military doctrine. The asteroid belt artifacts had provided more than just technology. They had given humanity a complete understanding of how their enemies fought. The psychological impact on the alien fleet was devastating. These warriors had conquered 47 star systems and defeated dozens of different species, but they had never faced an enemy that had spent decades preparing specifically to fight them. Every human attack targeted systems and weaknesses that should have been unknown to any external force. The strikes were too precise and too well coordinated to be the result of luck or desperation. President Walsh watched the battle unfold on screens that showed tactical information gathered by sensors throughout the solar system. The human fleet was outnumbered almost 100 to 1, but they were winning through superior preparation and intimate knowledge of enemy capabilities. Each attack had been planned years in advance, based on intelligence gathered during secret missions to Cytherian territory. Admiral Vorth realized that he had fallen into a trap that had been generations in the making. The human appearance of helplessness had been a deception so complete that it had fooled the most advanced intelligence services in the galaxy. The primitive technology visible from space was camouflage for a civilization that had been building advanced warships in secret for decades. The scope of human preparation became clear as hidden installations throughout the solar system revealed themselves. Jupiter's largest moon housed manufacturing facilities that had been producing advanced spacecraft for 20 years. Saturn's rings concealed weapon platforms capable of generating artificial black holes that could destroy ships from millions of miles away. Even Earth's moon had been converted into a massive fortress, its far side bristling with railgun batteries that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Captain Stone led a squadron of 12 ships in the most daring assault of the battle. Using quantum tunneling technology that allowed matter to pass through barriers that should have been impenetrable, the human vessels appeared inside the hangar bays of the Cytherian flagship. The ships materialized in spaces that were supposed to be completely secure, deploying boarding parties directly onto the alien command deck. The human Marines wore powered armor that incorporated personal shield generators and weapons designed specifically for combat in alien environments. Sergeant Tom Williams led the assault team through corridors that his people had studied in detail through captured intelligence reports. Every Marine carried schematics of Cytherian ship layouts, spoke basic Cytherian military language, and knew the exact locations of critical systems and defensive positions. The boarding action revealed another layer of human preparation that shocked the alien defenders. The Marines moved through the ship like they had trained aboard identical vessels for years. They knew which doors could be forced, which passages led to essential systems, and which defensive positions could be bypassed through maintenance tunnels. The humans were not just fighting Cytherian ships, they were fighting enemies whose technology they understood better than the aliens themselves. Admiral Vorth found himself trapped in his own command center as human forces advanced through his flagship. The boarding party had disabled his communication systems within minutes of arrival, cut off his escape routes, and surrounded his command staff with precision that suggested perfect intelligence about ship operations. The humans were not just lucky or desperate. They were executing a plan that had been perfected through years of study and preparation. The tide of battle turned decisively when human reinforcements arrived from interstellar space. These were not emergency vessels or desperate reinforcements. They were a complete battle fleet that had been waiting beyond the edge of the solar system for the trap to close. Led by Admiral Beth Harrison aboard the SNV Indomitable, the new arrivals represented humanity's most advanced technology and their most experienced combat crews. The Catherian Empire faced a strategic nightmare that no military doctrine had prepared them for. Their overwhelming technological advantage had evaporated against an enemy who had spent decades reverse engineering and improving upon their own weapons systems. Their superior numbers meant nothing when human ships could attack from directions that were supposed to be impossible. Most importantly, their perfect record of conquest was about to end against a species they had dismissed as primitive and helpless. Commander Nexus, now effectively in command of what remained of the alien fleet, tried to implement emergency withdrawal procedures. But the humans had anticipated even this final desperate move. Every escape route was blocked by gravity interdictors that prevented faster-than-light travel. Every hyperspace lane was mined with quantum disruption devices that would destroy any ship attempting to flee. The trap was complete, and the most powerful fleet in the galaxy found itself helpless against an enemy they had completely underestimated. The solar system transformed into humanity's greatest weapon. What had appeared to be empty space between planets revealed itself as a carefully designed battlefield where every asteroid, every moon, and every seemingly natural formation had been converted into a component of an enormous defensive network. Hidden bases that had been invisible to alien sensors activated simultaneously, revealing the true scope of human preparation for interstellar war. Sergeant Tom Williams moved through the corridors of the Catherian flagship with his boarding party, but they were not exploring unknown territory. Every passage, every junction, and every defensive position had been mapped in detail through intelligence gathered during decades of secret operations in enemy space. The Marines wore armor that had been designed specifically to counter Catherian weapons and carried equipment that exploited weaknesses in alien technology that should have been unknown to any human. The boarding party reached the alien command center in less than 30 minutes, following routes through maintenance tunnels and service passages that bypassed every major defensive position. The Catherian crew fought bravely, but they were defending against enemies who understood their own ship better than they did. Human weapons cut through alien armor like it was made of paper, while Catherian energy beams barely scratched the powered suits worn by the boarding party. Admiral Beth Harrison commanded the human reinforcement fleet from the bridge of the SNV Indomitable, watching tactical displays that showed the complete destruction of Catherian military doctrine. Her ships represented 20 years of continuous technological development based on captured alien artifacts and intelligence gathered through secret missions that had never appeared in any official records. The new human vessels demonstrated capabilities that even the original Catherian designers had never imagined possible: quantum armor that could become transparent to enemy weapons while remaining solid for structural support; gravity manipulation systems that could create localized distortions in spacetime, allowing ships to change direction instantly regardless of momentum or inertia. Most impressive of all, dimensional weapons that could attack targets through higher dimensions, bypassing any conventional defensive system. Commander Nexus tried desperately to coordinate a defensive response, but his tactical systems had been designed to fight conventional enemies using predictable strategies. The humans attacked from every direction simultaneously, using technologies that contradicted basic principles of physics as understood by most galactic civilizations. Worse, every human assault targeted specific vulnerabilities that were supposed to be classified information known only to Catherian military engineers. Dr. Amy Rodriguez revealed the final piece of humanity's deception in a broadcast transmitted throughout the solar system on channels that reached both human and alien forces. The asteroid belt artifacts that had provided the foundation for human technological advancement were not random debris from ancient battles. They were pieces of Cytherian ships that had been carefully collected and studied during covert operations in enemy territory. For 25 years, human intelligence operatives had been infiltrating Cytherian space, observing military operations, and gathering samples of advanced technology. The aliens had never detected these intrusions because human stealth systems were based on improvements to Cytherian designs. The hunters had been hunting themselves without ever realizing it. The scope of human intelligence operations shocked even the most paranoid Cytherian officers. Human agents had attended alien military academies, served aboard Cytherian warships, and participated in the conquest of other worlds. They had studied enemy tactics from the inside, learned alien languages and customs, and transmitted detailed intelligence reports back to Earth through communication networks that had remained undetected for decades. Captain Rex Stone led his squadron in attacks that demonstrated the psychological impact of fighting an enemy that knew everything about your capabilities while revealing nothing about their own. Human ships appeared where they should have been impossible, attacked systems that should have been invulnerable, and disappeared before return fire could be coordinated. The Cytherian fleet found itself fighting ghosts that struck without warning and vanished without trace. The battle reached its climax when human forces demonstrated their ultimate technological achievement. The SNV Indomitable activated a dimensional cascade generator that created a localized disruption in space-time itself. Cytherian ships caught within the effect found their hulls aging decades and seconds, their power systems failing as quantum fields destabilized, and their crews experiencing temporal distortions that made coordinated action impossible. Admiral Vorth, now a prisoner aboard his own flagship, watched his empire's most powerful fleet dissolve into chaos and defeat. The humans had not just outfought his forces, they had outthought them, outplanned them, and outprepared them. Every aspect of Cytherian military doctrine had been studied, analyzed, and countered by an enemy that had spent generations preparing for this single battle. The psychological warfare proved as devastating as the physical combat. Cytherian officers realized that their entire military philosophy was based on flawed assumptions about primitive civilizations. They had believed that technological superiority guaranteed victory, that overwhelming force would always defeat inferior enemies, and that advanced species could never be deceived by primitive ones. The humans had proved every assumption wrong. President Walsh addressed the world from her secure bunker, but her message was broadcast throughout the galaxy on communication channels that had been secretly established years earlier. Human colonies. In nearby star systems, bases on planets that were supposed to be unexplored, and intelligence networks that had been operating in alien territory for decades, all received the same transmission. Earth was not just defending itself, it was coordinating a galaxy-wide intelligence operation that had been decades in the making. The final phase of the battle demonstrated why humans had become the most feared species in their region of the galaxy without anyone realizing it. Their victory was not the result of superior technology or overwhelming force, but of careful planning, patient preparation, and the willingness to sacrifice immediate advantages for long-term strategic goals. They had appeared weak when they were strong, primitive when they were advanced, and helpless when they were the most dangerous predators in known space. Captain Lisa Park commanded the Retribution as it led the final assault on the remaining Cytherian vessels. Her ship's dimensional phase capabilities allowed it to attack multiple targets simultaneously by existing in several different dimensions at once. The technology was so advanced that most galactic civilizations would have dismissed it as impossible, but humans had been developing it for 20 years based on theoretical principles discovered in captured alien databases. The Cytherian Empire's greatest fleet found itself reduced to fewer than 400 ships from an original force of 3,000. Their technological advantage had been neutralized by an enemy that understood their systems better than they did. Their numerical superiority meant nothing against opponents who could attack from impossible directions. Most importantly, their psychological dominance over primitive species had been shattered by a civilization that had proven deception could be more powerful than any weapon. Commander Nexus faced a choice that no Cytherian officer had ever confronted before. His empire's military doctrine contained no provisions for surrender, but continuing the fight meant certain annihilation of his remaining forces. The humans had demonstrated that they could destroy his fleet completely whenever they chose to do so. The only question was whether he would accept defeat with dignity or force them to prove their superiority through total destruction. The galaxy learned a new fear in the hours following humanity's victory. News of the Cytherian Empire's defeat spread through interstellar communication networks faster than the light-speed barriers that normally limited information transfer. Advanced civilizations that had considered themselves safe from primitive species suddenly realized that appearance and reality could be very different things in a universe where deception had become humanity's greatest weapon. Admiral Beth Harrison offered terms to the surviving alien forces from the command deck of her flagship, but her words carried the weight of absolute military superiority. 400 Cytherian ships faced a human fleet that had grown to more than 200 vessels as reinforcements continued arriving from hidden bases throughout the solar system and beyond. The aliens could surrender and accept life imprisonment, or they could continue fighting and face complete annihilation. Commander Nexus found himself making a decision that violated every principle of Cytherian military tradition. His empire's doctrine had no provisions for surrender because no imperial fleet had ever faced defeat. Their overwhelming technological advantages and superior numbers had guaranteed victory in every previous conflict. But these humans had turned every assumption about primitive warfare into a deadly trap that had cost him most of his fleet. The final surrender took place aboard Admiral Harrison's flagship in a ceremony that was broadcast throughout the galaxy on communication channels that most civilizations had never known existed. Human intelligence networks that had been secretly established over decades revealed themselves as Commander Nexus formally transferred control of his remaining ships to the species his empire had come to conquer. Dr. Amy Rodriguez addressed the United Nations from her underground command center, but her revelation shocked the world's leaders as much as it did the watching galaxy. The 25 years of secret technological development had been funded and directed by a shadow organization that operated independently of any government. The group included scientists, military officers, and intelligence operatives from dozens of countries who had worked together in complete secrecy to prepare for humanity's first interstellar war. The captured Cytherian databases contained information that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Star charts showing the locations of hundreds of inhabited worlds, military intelligence on dozens of different species, and most importantly, the complete records of the Empire's conquests over the past 3 centuries. Humanity now possessed detailed information about every enslaved civilization and every military weakness in the galaxy's most powerful empire. President Walsh learned that the scope of human deception had extended far beyond hiding advanced technology from alien observers. Secret colonies had been established on planets in nearby star systems, hidden bases operated on moons throughout local space, and human agents had been living among alien populations for decades without detection. Earth was not just another world defending itself. It was the center of an interstellar civilization that had grown in secret while appearing primitive and helpless. The psychological impact of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy like a plague. Species that had submitted to Cytherian rule without resistance realized that they could have fought back if they had prepared properly. Civilizations that considered themselves advanced understood that primitive appearance could hide sophisticated capabilities. Most disturbing of all, every spacefaring culture began to wonder what other deceptions might be operating in their own territory. Captain Rex Stone commanded the boarding party that took control of the Cytherian flagship, but his mission was not just military conquest. The captured vessel contained the complete archives of the Empire's intelligence services, including detailed files on every species they had encountered and every world they had conquered. The information would allow humanity to liberate enslaved populations and coordinate resistance movements throughout Cytherian space. The war's aftermath proved that humanity's victory was not an accident or a result of luck. Hidden manufacturing. Facilities throughout the solar system began producing advanced spacecraft using technology that was decades ahead of anything other species possessed. The primitive rockets and chemical engines that had convinced the aliens of human helplessness were revealed to be obsolete museum pieces maintained only to preserve the deception. Sergeant Tom Williams led the team that secured the Cytherian flagship's computer systems, but their mission revealed the final scope of human intelligence operations. The alien databases contained records of human infiltrators who had served at the highest levels of imperial government, military officers who had participated in the conquest of other worlds, and scientists who had contributed to Cytherian technological development while secretly transmitting information back to Earth. The liberation of enslaved worlds began within days of the Empire's defeat. Human ships appeared in star systems throughout Cytherian space, bringing weapons, intelligence, and tactical support to populations that had been subjugated for generations. The rebels were not fighting alone. They were supported by an interstellar civilization that had spent decades preparing for exactly this type of coordinated uprising. Admiral Harrison coordinated the galaxy-wide rebellion from her flagship, but her role was not that of a conqueror seeking to replace one empire with another. Human strategy focused on liberating enslaved populations and establishing independent governments rather than creating a new imperial system. The goal was to break up centralized tyranny, not to replace it with human domination. The Cytherian Empire collapsed within months as subject species throughout their territory rose in revolt. Armed with human weapons and supported by human intelligence, the rebellions succeeded far beyond what anyone had thought possible. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries regained their freedom, while the Imperial fleet found itself fighting insurgencies on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Dr. Rodriguez revealed the final truth about humanity's technological development in a scientific paper that was transmitted to every advanced civilization in the galaxy. The asteroid belt artifacts had contained examples of technology from 17 different species, all previous victims of Cytherian conquest. Humanity had spent 25 years reverse engineering and improving upon an entire catalog of galactic innovations, creating new technologies that surpassed their original designs. President Walsh's final address to Earth carried throughout the galaxy on communication networks that spanned dozens of star systems. Her words reached human colonies that the world had never known existed, allied species that had been secretly supporting Earth's development, and liberated populations that were learning about their true rescuers for the first time. Humanity had not just defended one world. They had coordinated the largest liberation movement in galactic history. The universe learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their military forces, but their patience and their willingness to sacrifice short-term advantages for long-term victory. They had appeared weak for decades while secretly becoming strong, had seemed primitive while developing advanced capabilities, and had looked helpless while preparing to become the galaxy's newest superpower. The alien armada that had come to conquer Earth became the foundation of humanity's interstellar fleet. Cytherian vessels were retrofitted with human improvements and crewed by the species they had tried to enslave. Advanced alien technology was combined with human innovation to create spacecraft that were superior to anything either civilization could have built alone. The galaxy would never again underestimate a species based on appearance or technological development. Humanity had proven that careful planning and strategic deception could overcome seemingly insurmountable advantages, that primitive civilizations could hide sophisticated capabilities, and that the most dangerous enemies were often those who looked like easy prey. The age of casual conquest was over, and every spacefaring civilization would have to consider the possibility that their next target might be humanity's next ally, already armed with weapons and knowledge that could turn any invasion into a trap.